o'clock, March 10th, and I would like to call the Code Board.
Your mic down. Your mic.
Oh, no, just
Can't hear you
bring
very
it
well.
down.
Try again. It's
Got it.
2 o'clock on March 10th, and the Code Board, Code Enforcement Board is called to order. Bobby will call the roll, please.
Ms. Wade,
Present.
Mr. Fidio,
Here.
Mr. Weeks,
Here.
Mrs. Telliar,
Here.
Mrs. Archer,
Here?
Mr. Rollinson,
Here.
Dr. Matea.
Here.
That completes your roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Trask, Board Attorney, will lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please.
Father in heaven, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is in the best interest for the city of Tarpon Springs and its fellow citizens. This we pray. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If anybody has a cell phone, please turn it off. It is the intention of this board to promote, protect, and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Tarpon Springs by providing an equitable, effective, and inexpensive method of enforcing various codes within the city of Tarpon Springs. Any aggrieved party may appeal a final administrative order of this board to the Circuit Court. Such appeal should be filed within 30 days of the execution of the order to be appealed. Florida Statute 286.0105 requires any party appealing a decision of this board to have a record of the proceedings to support such an appeal. The procedure of this board is as follows. First, the city presents its witnesses and exhibits, after which the alleged violator is able to ask the city witnesses any specific questions regarding their testimony. Secondly, the alleged violator is allowed to make a presentation and present his or her witnesses and exhibits. Then the city can question the alleged violator's witnesses. After both rounds of testimony, both on the part of the city and on the part of the alleged violator, each party is asked to give a closing argument, first by the city and then by the alleged violator. After those three steps are taken, the board will close the public hearing portion of the case to discuss it and take appropriate action. Before we begin the public hearings, we'll have all potential witnesses stand up and be sworn in by the secretary of the board.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give us whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You be seated.
The first three agenda items are adjacent properties,
Yes, ma'am.
and we're going to consider them as one. The city is going to present their case, and then the board has been given testimony by the owner, which we will consider their side of the case. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the first case is case number 19-220 for 420 Hibiscus Street with the name under Michael Mena, senior trustee. So Exhibit 1 contains all the photographs. Exhibit 2 contains all the notices, to include the notice of violation and notice of hearings. Exhibit 3 contains the administrative documents, to include the case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit 4 contains the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of the photographs and exhibits were given to the property owner, are exact copies of what is being presented to the board, and because he is unable to attend due to a surgery, we went ahead and emailed them all to him. All notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violation and notice of hearings are sent, returned, received, requested, and first-class mail. And Madam Chair, please accept all exhibits into the record as evidence.
Yes, thank you. Bobby will do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have had contact with the owner through the owner's son, Mr. Trigiano, by phone call and email. This case started all the way back on April 3rd of 2019. The initial inspection actually was conducted by Officer Gasson, and his inspection note reads as follows. Received an anonymous walk-up complaint regarding the property on the southeast corner of Pine and Alternate 19. Discovered they consisted of different parcels. Buildings have metal roofs which are peeling apart, holes in the walls, Brazilian pepper trees on property, overgrown grass and vegetation, windows were boarded up, mold was growing on the wall in numerous places, the wood framing around the roof is rotting and in many places peeling apart. On April 5th of 2019, a notice of violation was mailed and the green card was returned signed. On June 11th of 2021, I met with the owner since I was the new inspector, and after meeting with the owner and viewing the property, I did speak with the building department and planning and zoning departments, just letting them know the circumstances of the case and getting their recommendations. They did pretty much explain that the roof did need to have repairs and that they did need to be completed with permits. They also had the building official, Mr. Powell, also had additional suggestions for the owner of different possibilities of actually demoing the roof structure and putting on another kind of, building another kind of structure, but again, all with the appropriate permits. On December 10th of 2021, and I just want to make sure you're not with this case.
47 Sunset Drive.
I'm sorry, excuse me, sir. Could you tell us for which case you're here?
Well, they said that you could talk to after the meeting, anybody could bring up anything.
Yes.
That's what we like to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
I
Sorry,
just want to make sure you weren't here for a case.
Sorry,
we were done.
Beth.
No problem.
Okay, so on December 10th of 2021, I conducted a reinspection. This case had been placed on hold to allow the owner to focus on a safety issue at a different property. That case had been since closed and complied. The roof was still in a dilapidated condition, and there were pepper trees still present. Therefore, we decided to, the roof was still in a dilapidated condition, and we decided to move forward with the case. Again, I just was trying to explain why this was opened in 2019. They did have a different case, which getting compliance was very costly for the property owner. The lift station alone that they were required to install, I believe, was over $50,000. Most of the violations had been brought into compliance other than completing the roof, and that's why we kind of put the case on hold to let them finish an issue that was more important. And anyway, so at this point, we decided to go ahead and move forward. So on December 13th of 2021, we sent a courtesy letter, and I conducted the reinspection on January 10th of 2022. I didn't see any permits in the system, and we at this point had not been contacted again by the owner, even though we had previous emails and phone call conversations. I also took new pictures at that time on January 10th of 2022. On January 14th of 2022, a notice of violation was mailed, and per the USPS tracking, it was delivered. On February 4th of 2022, I conducted another reinspection. The repairs had not been made to the roof, and I did not see a permit in the system. On February 7th of 2022, a notice of hearing was mailed, and the green card was received signed. On February 25th of 2022, the sign was posted and the affidavit of posting was signed. On March 9th, yesterday of 2022, I conducted the final inspection, and again, the roof had not been repaired with the appropriate permits. So let me go ahead and bring up the pictures. Okay, so this was all the way back in April of 2019 when Officer Gasson took these pictures. You can see the condition of the roof, you can see the condition of the wall. Again, the roof, you know, everything's peeling back. They had pepper trees on the property. Okay, so most of the pepper trees on the property had been removed. They had removed a lot of the mold and mildew, repainted the wall. However, the roof was still in poor condition. There was some trash and debris that I believe have been cleaned up. However, again, the roof is still in poor condition. And this is on the, when the gate was opened, you could get a visual through the gate, and that was what it looks like on the inside of the property. So it's pretty much the same. The metal's just in disrepair. Okay, so the property owner, just to kind of summarize, he had sent an email that he was not going to be able to attend the code board due to a surgery. He does have a timeline in place, and it's in your email. He basically is saying that in order to get the survey completed, it's going to take 3 weeks. After the survey is when it would go to the engineer. That's going to take another 2 weeks. In order for it to be reviewed by the city, he's saying that that would take another 5 weeks, which is entirely possible in that it can take up to 30 days for a permit to be reviewed, and if you have any revisions, then it can take time to complete those revisions. The roofing company, he was told would take 10 to 11 weeks after that time to get the work completed, which is a total of basically 22 weeks. So the deadline he's requesting is September 3rd of 2022. I honestly don't have a big problem with the request for the deadline. I just decided that I wanted a deadline to be established where there is no more delaying this project. This project does need to be completed. It needs to be finished. I wanted a solid deadline. You know, I'll let you obviously determine whether you consider that reasonable or not. The way it's broken down, I don't disagree that it could take that much time, and I don't have a problem with that. So for this particular parcel, most of the parcels, the violation codes will be the same except for one. But I would like to find this property in violation of 8-40, the duty to maintain private property, in violation of City Code 6-1, which adopts the International Property Maintenance Codes, in violation of International Property Maintenance Code 304.7 for the roof, and in violation of City Code 105.1, permits required to repair the roof. And that concludes my testimony.
I'm a little unclear. We're going to address each of these separately.
I believe I have to, and some of the violations are different for one of the properties.
Okay. And why is a survey required for the roof?
In order to get the permits, he has to have a survey completed.
For roof?
That's what he's saying. I believe that's correct, but
Okay.
What's the property used for? Is it a business or?
this is behind Qmar on North Pinellas.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm not sure exactly what they use it for, but I do believe I believe Qmar is using it
Okay.
as part of their business.
The board is using the testimony that was presented to us for the other people's side. Do anybody else have questions for her?
Yeah, I still have the question that was brought up about the survey issue. Okay, we're taking his word that he needs to have a survey done before he can even submit a permit or request a permit.
I guess since it's 3 weeks, I figured.
Most of the permits that the building department requires, I've seen requires a survey, but I can't swear that he would need it for this.
Okay, and this thing was opened up, let me do my math here, 2 years ago? a year and a half ago?
Almost 3.
2 years, oh, yeah, 2.5, yeah, thank you.
19.
2.5 years ago, and so what's the delay, or why has it been delayed? I know,
So like I said, it's financial. What I was trying to explain before is he'd had that previous code case. That was a very expensive, you can determine whether it's, anyway. He had a very large expense having to put in a lift station, add both water connections and sewer connections for a property that had other tenants on it. And because of that expense, he requested, and being that he had pretty much come into compliance with the exception of the roof, he had requested that it be put on hold. Officer Gasson did agree. And now that that case has been completed, that's when I decided to move forward and, either get this completed or go to Code Board. It wasn't completed, so we're here at Code Board.
And the other property was a property that had tenants on it and wasn't connected to city sewer.
Or water.
Yes, okay.
And that case is in compliance now.
Yeah.
Yay. Anybody else have questions?
Was that a comment on extensions?
Pardon me?
Did you say something about extensions?
Officer Gasson had put the case on hold to allow compliance for another property because most of the violations except for the roof had been brought into compliance. So yes, they put this case on hold for a significant amount of time.
Well, I would submit to the board that with 4 separate entities involved, specifically a governmental agency, the timeline is unrealistic. So how do you address that after September 23rd?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
He thinks this is a long time to allow it to continue, but I think we have to look at it as it's starting now, and we're finally seeing a date for resolution, which we can vote on it shortly. Am I interpreting that correctly?
No, I'm just sure this was presented in good faith, but realistically speaking, when you're dealing with these entities, the end line is never going to be met. So
September, 6 months.
at what point do we say, okay, we're going to extend the timeline?
Well, I believe today is when you're going to decide on the deadline that they have to meet.
and then we can impose the fine.
After that time?
Yeah, we can impose a $500 fine per day afterwards.
As long as we recognize that this is not locked in concrete. I mean,
Oh, right, the onus is upon him to get it resolved by that
Right.
time, and we can make the penalty as such that it would be a very large penalty if he doesn't meet that timeline.
Since it
Because-
has gone on for this long,
Quite a
yes.
long-
Right, right.
There's no further discussion. Could I hear a motion, please?
Okay.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented and the law that at the time of the alleged violations, sections 8-40, 6-1 of the 2017 Building Code, City Code 304.7, and the City Code of 105.1 of the city ordinances of Tarpon Spring were in force, and in fact, and the respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Mateo?
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Your motion carries.
Following that motion, do I hear a second motion?
Yeah. I move that the respondent shall have until 23 September 2022 or suffer a fine of $500 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code sections.
It has to be a maximum of 250. This is an initial violation and not a repeat.
Okay.
So
Then
maximum of
I amend that to
250.
250 per day.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Who was that?
Me.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Mateo?
Aye.
Mr. Rolliston,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar,
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. Wade.
Yes.
Thank you. Your motion carries.
And that information will be forwarded to this owner. Item 2, 19-800000221, which is a vacant lot on Pine Street. And same owner or trust owns this property.
Okay, thank you. So this is case number 19-800000221. Exhibit 1 contains all the photographs. Exhibit 2 contains all the notices to include the notice of violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit 3 contains the administration documents to include the case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit 4 contains the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of the photographs and exhibits that were given to the violator are exact copies of what is being presented to the board. All notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violation and notice of hearings are sent to the, return receipt requested, and first-class mail. Madam Chair, please accept all exhibits into the record as evidence.
Thank you. Bobby will do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll be less detailed since the facts are pretty close to the same. We have had contact with the owner by phone and email. On April 3rd of 2019, Officer Gasson conducted the initial inspection. Again, he received an anonymous walk-up of a complaint regarding the 3 properties. Buildings have metal roofs which are peeling apart, holes in the walls, Brazilian pepper trees on property, overgrown grass and other vegetation, windows boarded up, mold growing on the walls in numerous places, wood framing around the roof line rotting in many places and peeling apart, graffiti on the walls. On April 5th of 2019, a notice of violation was mailed and the green card was returned signed. On June 11th of 2021, I had a meeting with the property owner, and we tried to find a resolution for him and what permits would be required for the repairs. On December 10th of 2021, I conducted a reinspection. The case had been put on hold while there was a safety issue at a different property that was being addressed. That case is now in compliance, and this case was restarted. The roof had not been repaired. On December 13th of 2021, we sent a courtesy letter. On January 10th of 2022, I conducted a reinspection and the roof had not been repaired. On January 14th of 2022, a notice of violation was mailed and the green card was delivered. On February 4th of 2022, I conducted a reinspection. No repairs had been made to the roof, and there was no permit in the system. On February 7th of 2022, a notice of hearing was mailed and the green card was returned signed. On February 25th of 2022, the sign was posted and the affidavit of posting was signed. On March 9th of 2022, the final inspection was conducted and the roof had not been repaired with the appropriate permits. I already went over the deadline requested by the property owner, so let me go ahead and bring up the pictures for this. They're very similar. I'll just briefly go through them. Okay, so the pepper trees on this property had already been removed. It's, again, the roof. All the graffiti's gone, the mold's gone, it's been painted. Again, it's the roof that goes in between. That the windows are no longer boarded. Again, it's just focusing on the roof. And this is the parcel that's in the center. So I would like to find the property in violation of City Code 8-40, the duty to maintain private property. City Code 6-1, that adopts the Building Code and International Property Maintenance Code. I'm going to skip over the exterior walls. That was for the mold and mildew. There is no longer mold and mildew on the wall, so I'm not asking to find that one in violation. I would like to find it in violation of Florida Building Code 105.1, permits required to repair the roof. And I would like to find it in violation of City Code, International Property Maintenance Code of 304.7 for the roof. And that concludes my testimony.
I'm sorry, but it says vacant lot and we're looking at a building.
In property appraiser, that's how it's listed. The most southern property, and we have to go by what's in property appraiser and tax collector, has an address of 420 Hibiscus. The middle property is listed as a vacant lot, and the northern property is listed as 424 East Pine Street.
Okay, I'm sorry, it just was confusing.
It's a good question. It's just that's how it's listed in property appraiser, and that's how we have to use the description.
Okay,
But it's all being used as one parcel. It's just separated into three.
thank you.
The letter that the gentleman sent, the email, it had dates for just that work. Is it the same dates we're talking about?
Those dates he meant to have include for all three because it's all, this
Okay.
roof actually expands all three parcels.
Okay.
Another reason we need the survey.
Probably.
Not a bad idea.
Anybody else have questions for her? Could we hear a motion?
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in the law that at the time of the alleged violation, Section 8-40 of the City Code 6-1, Florida Building Code 105.1, and City Code IPMC 304.7 were in force and effect, and the respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Matea?
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston?
Yes.
Ms. Archer?
Yes.
Ms. Telliar?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Your motion carries.
Following that motion, a penalty phase is required. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move that the respondent shall have until September 23 of 2022 to bring the property into compliance or suffer a fine of $250 per day. Each day thereafter, the respondent remains in violation.
Second.
And just to be totally correct, that would be the violations listed above, City Code 8-40, 6-1, FBC 105.1, and IPMC 304.7. It has been, the motion has been made and seconded. Bobby, roll call, please.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Matea?
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Your motion carries.
Item is 19-800000222, 424 East Pine Street, the same owner, Michael Mena Senior Trust.
Okay, so this is case number 19-800000222 for 424 East Pine Street, Michael Menner Senior Trustee. Exhibit 1 contains all the photographs. Exhibit 2 contains all the notices to include the notice of violation and notice of hearings. Exhibit 3 contains all the administrative documents to include the case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit 4 contains the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of the photographs and exhibits that were given to the violator are exact copies of what is being presented to the board. All notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violation and notice of hearings are sent return receipt requested and first-class mail. Madam Chair, please accept all exhibits into the record as evidence.
Thank you, Bobby will do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so again, we've had contact with the owner by phone and by email. On April 3rd of 2019, Officer Gasson conducted the initial inspection, and his note is as follows. Received an anonymous walk-up complaint regarding the property on the southeast corner of Pine and Alternate 19. Buildings have metal roofs which are peeling apart, holes in the walls, Brazilian pepper trees on property, overgrown grass and vegetation, windows boarded up. mold growing on the walls in numerous places, wood framing around the roof, rotting in many places, and peeling apart, graffiti on the walls. On April 5th of 2019, a notice of violation was mailed and the green card was returned signed. On June 11th of 2021, I conducted a meeting with the owner where I was able to view the property and also spoke with the building official afterward and did verify that permits were definitely required for the repairs of the roof. On December 10th of 2021, I conducted a reinspection. This owner had a safety issue at another location, and this is why the case was put on hold. The roof is still in disrepair, pepper trees were present, and graffiti is present. And I'll make this clear, at one time, the graffiti actually was all gone, but when I did do the reinspection in December of 2021, it does have a new graffiti that's on there that is still there. On June 11th, I already explained my meeting on June 11th. On December 13th of 2021, a courtesy letter was mailed. On January 10th of 2022, I conducted a reinspection. No repairs have been made, nor the permits in the system. There is one pepper tree that I can see is growing on the northwest corner, and there is graffiti present on that wall. On January 14th of 2022, the notice of violation was mailed and the green card was delivered per the USPS tracking website. On February 4th of 2022, I conducted a reinspection. No repairs had been made to the roof and no permits were in the system. The pepper tree was still there and there's still a small amount of graffiti on the wall. On February 7th of 2022, a notice of hearing was mailed and the green card was returned signed. On February 25th of 2022, the sign was posted and an affidavit of posting was signed. On March 9th of 2022, I did conduct the final inspection. The roof had not been repaired and the pepper tree was not removed. There is still a little graffiti present. And as commented, the property owner did send the email stating why he couldn't be present due to a surgery, and gave an explanation of why it would take till September 23rd, 2022 to gain compliance. I'll go ahead and pull up the pictures, which again are very similar. Oops.
Does anybody have questions for her? Mr. Trask, I did have one question. I know we have a limit on the fine that can be imposed, but since they are separate properties, this owner is looking at $750 a day if he doesn't get this correct.
$250 per property, but a total of $750 if it's found to be violation at that same dollar amount, yes.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
And that is appropriate and allowed under the law.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could I hear a motion, please? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. You ready for me to keep going? Okay, so basically, again, the roof is in disrepair. This roof is actually is a little bit separate. This is the the most northern property, and there is a separate, like, I don't know if I don't know what the building's being used for, but the roof is in disrepair, just like the roof over the other sections. That's just an image of it from the Pine Street side. Again, just showing that it's dilapidated. Oh, this is a picture of the pepper tree that's inside the wall that needs to be removed. Again, another picture of the roof. And there is the little bit of graffiti that needs to be painted over again or removed. And that's it for that one.
Beth, this is one giant building that occupies this whole property?
It's 3 parcels that go from Pine. So you have Pine and alternate 19. That's what that property was. Then there's what's considered in property appraiser a vacant land, no address to it, right below, which is a large parcel, and then another parcel below that. south of that, which is 420 Hibiscus. So all three parcels are all connected.
But the structures that are on it, is it one structure that expands over all the property?
Sorta.
So one of the structures, and I'm sorry, I didn't have they're so big, it's hard to get just one big picture, but, so the initial two cases, it's more of just a roof, a freestanding roof with poles on the inside, almost like a pole barn type structure, whereas that last one is more of just a structure with walls and a roof that's rotting and falling apart.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so for this case, I would like to find the property in violation of City Code 8-40, the duty to maintain private property, in violation of City Code 6-1, that adopts the Florida Building Code and the International Property Maintenance Code, in violation of the International Property Maintenance Code 304.7 for the roof, in violation of Florida Building Code 105.1 for permits required, in violation of 133.03 tree exemptions, which is for the removal of the pepper tree, in violation of International Property Maintenance Code 302.9 for defacement of property, in other words, the graffiti. And actually, Officer Gasson had cited 304.13 for the boarded windows. They are no longer boarded, so I'm not going to bring that one forward. And that concludes my testimony.
Questions? Motion? Motion, anyone?
I move, based on testimony, evidence, and facts presented by law, that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 8-40, City Code 6-1, 2017, Building Code 2018, IPMC, City Code IPMC 304.7, City Code 105.1, City Code 133.03, and City Code IPMC 302.9 of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect, and the respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Who was that?
Tom?
Thank you. But roll call, please, Bobby?
Dr. Matea,
Aye.
Mr. Rolliston,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio,
Aye.
Ms. Wade.
Yes.
Please, your roll call.
Since they were found in violation, we need to go to a penalty phase.
I move that the respondent shall have until September 23rd of 2022 to bring the property into compliance with Code Section City Code 8-40, City Code 6-1, 2017, City Code IPMC 304.7, City Code 105.1, City Code 133.03, City Code IPMC 302.9, City Code, and we're not doing that last one, or suffer a fine of $250 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of the city code sections.
I second.
That was Mr. Weeks. And then roll call, please.
Dr. Matea,
Aye.
Mr. Rolliston,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio,
Aye.
Ms. Wade.
Yes.
That completes your roll call.
And although they're not here, I will put for the record that the city will explain all this in the documentation they send to the owners. Thank you. Item 4, case number 22-8000020. This is also a vacant lot on East Lemon. The property is described as 12-22-27756-002-0050, vacant lot on East Lemon. The owner is Betty Nolan. Is anyone here for that property? Seeing none, the city will present their case.
Okay. And my name is Beth. I'm the FACE Certified Inspector for the City of Tarpon Springs. I'll get that on the record. I haven't been saying that. This is case number 22-8000020, the vacant lot in East Lemon, owner Betty Nolan, parcel number 122715277560020020050. Exhibit 1 contains all the photographs. Exhibit 2 contains all the notices to include the notice of violation and notice of hearings. Exhibit 3 contains the administrative documents to include the case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit 4 contains the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of the photographs and exhibits that were given to the property owner are exact copies of what is being presented to the board. All notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violations and notice of hearings are sent return receipt requested and first-class mail. Madam Chair, please accept all exhibits into the record as evidence.
Thank you. Bobby will do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have had contact mostly with the owner's representative by phone, email, and in person by the representative Josh Colossi. So on January 21st of 2022, I conducted the initial inspection. Per Shannon, the building department, they had an expired permit with comments that included to sod or seed with soil for part of the permit process, which had never been completed. As a result, there was a silt fence that was still on the property. However, it was in disrepair and not installed correctly. They were storing equipment and building materials on the property. On January 21st of 2022, a notice of violation was mailed and the green cards were returned signed. On February 8th of 2022, I conducted a re-inspection. The silt fence had not been repaired, and all of the items that were being stored were still present. On February 11th of 2022, a notice of hearing was mailed, and we received the green card return signed. C-19, which a lot of them are stamped that these days, meaning COVID-19. On 2023 of 2022, the owner called and had stated they were ready for reinspection, so I did go back out. The silt fence was still not installed properly. There was no erosion control method in place like cedar sod. There was still a smaller amount of debris on the property, but there was still debris, and there was one trailer still parked on the alley side of the property. On February 25th of 2022, a sign was posted and an affidavit of posting was signed. On March 1st of 2022, I had a meeting with the representative, Mr. Josh Colossi, and I basically explained what needed to be in compliance. He had explained that they had actually decided not to complete the permit that they had put in the system, and I explained to him that the lot can't just be there with a silt fence forever, and that you can't store things on a vacant lot. And so if there was no permit, no building materials could be there, and they needed to do soil erosion control measures, and not just use the silt fence forever as a remedy. So after explaining all that, he said it would be ready by the final inspection. On March 9th of 2022, I did complete the final inspection. All of the debris had been removed. All of the vehicles were removed. The only thing really remaining was the erosion control. Seed had been put down. It's not sprouted yet. I think it literally has only been done a few days ago. Because this is the second time I've had a case for the exact same items, this is the reason why I brought it to Code Board. So let me go ahead and bring up the pictures. Okay. Okay, so when I first went out to the property, they had all kinds of things on it. This is from the alley side, all different kinds of equipment. Piles of soil. So basically, they'd gotten to the point where they only had the one trailer in the back. Most of the other materials were removed. This was the silt fence that was not installed properly. And additionally, the soil erosion control measures in the alley, there were none. There was no silt fence. So all the soil going that direction, there was not a silt fence up. And they had materials being stored, which you can on a vacant lot. And that pretty much is all the pictures. Okay, so basically what I'm asking for from the code board members today is, being that the permit's been pulled, I'm not requesting the violation of 6-1 or 105.1 for the permits required to be considered, in that they're really not in violation of those because they no longer have a permit that they're trying to obtain or one that's current. But what I am asking for the code board members to find is the property in violation of City Code 8-52 for the nuisance prohibitions. That violation is complied. I would like to establish them because this is the second time that I've had to address the same issues. So again, 8-52, I would like to see them found in violation but be in compliance with that code. I would also like to find them in violation of City Code 141.00, the stormwater management violation, so, to ensure that the erosion control measures are completed and that the seed takes hold and actually we don't have sand and soil eroding off the property. And that concludes my testimony.
We're going to address this as two separate measures. And do you have any idea of how long that stormwater management abatement might take place? A month?
I would say that would be very reasonable to allow that seed to take hold. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So we're going to address City Code 8-52 first. We need to establish the violation, and it is in compliance, correct?
That is in compliance, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I move, based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented, and law, that at the time of the alleged violation, City Code 8-52 was in full force and effect, and at the time of the notice of violation, the respondent was in violation of said code section. However, they are now in compliance.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, unless there's discussion.
Aye.
Bobby?
Dr. Matea,
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mr. Favidio,
Aye.
Ms. Wade.
Yes. And the second violation that we're going to address is City Code 141.00. If anybody would like to make a motion on that one.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in the law at the time of the alleged violations, Section City Code 141.00 of this code ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs were in effect, and the respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Matea,
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mr. Favidio,
Aye.
Ms. Wade.
Yes. Following that finding, the penalty phase should be assessed. If anybody would like to make a motion.
I move that the respondent shall have until 11 April to bring the property in compliance with City Code Section 141.00 or suffer a fine of $25 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code section.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please. Is there no discussion? Roll call.
Dr. Matea,
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio,
Aye.
Ms. Wade.
Yes.
Please your roll call.
Item 5 is 22-8000033. The address is 43380 US Highway 19 North. Robert Sprinthal Family Trust. No one's here for that case.
Okay. My name is Beth Hughes, the FACE Certified Inspector for the City of Tarpon Springs. This is case number 22-8000033 for 43380 US Highway 19 North. Owner is Robert A. Sprentnall Family Trust with Robert A. Sprentnall trustee. Exhibit 1 contains all the photographs. Exhibit 2 contains all the notices to include the notice of violations and notice of hearings. Exhibit 3 contains the administrative documents to include the case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit 4 contains the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of the photographs and exhibits that were given to the violator are exact copies of what is being presented to the board. All notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violations and notice of hearings are sent return receipt requested in first-class mail. And Madam Chair, please accept all exhibits into the record as evidence.
Thank you, Bobby will do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have had contact with the registered agent by email. On February 3rd of 2022, I conducted the initial inspection. No clearly marked handicap spaces were delineated in the parking lot. I did see 2 employees at that time that explained they were resurfacing the parking lot, and that's why they didn't have any delineated. On February 4th of 2022, I received confirmation from the deputy building official, Keith Mead. He stated that there is a requirement for the parking spaces for the Florida Accessibility Code of 208.2, and the signage requirement is in the Florida statute 553.5041, that they basically need delineated parking spaces and signs posted noting that they're handicap parking spaces. On February 4th of 2022, a notice of violation was mailed and the green card was not yet received. The United States Postal Service tracking shows that it's still in transit. On February 22nd of 2022, I conducted a reinspection. The handicap spots are still not delineated, nor any signs are posted. On February 25th, I sent an email to the registered agent, Mr. Hammer, just to let him know that I did post the property for the code board hearing, and that basically letting him know that if they even just put up the handicap parking signs while they're waiting for the parking lot to be resurfaced, that I would defer the code case. On February 22nd of 2022, a notice of hearing was mailed and the green card was returned signed. On February 25th of 2022, the sign was posted and the affidavit of posting was signed. On March 9th of 2022, I conducted the final inspection. The parking spaces were still not delineated and no signs had been installed. Okay, so let me bring up the pictures. This is basically the B21 store over the river. And anyways, this is just an image of the parking lot. This is the area where you can tell they used to have handicap parking, but now the signs are white. Every time I went there, the people parking in the spaces that had once been for handicap parking were not handicap vehicles. There's no sign on the exterior of the building or any sign on a post showing that that's what they're for. You know, there is some faint blue paint from when they used to be designated, but again, they're still not properly designated. So what I'm asking the code board members is to find the property in violation of 6-1, which is the city code that adopts the Florida Building Code, in violation of Florida Building Code 208.2 for the parking, which designates how many, that you have to have the handicap parking spots, and in violation of 127.04, which is the city code of the parking schedule that designates how many handicap spots per parking spaces are required. And that concludes my testimony.
Motion, questions?
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented and law that at the time of the alleged violation, section 208.2, City Code 6-1-2017, and City Code 127.04 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondents were in violation thereof.
Second.
Call, please, Bobby. Did you get the motion and the second? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Matea?
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Please, your roll call.
Following that, we need a motion regarding the penalty phase. Did they give you any time estimate?
No, ma'am, I haven't heard any more from him.
Thank you.
And you did say they were doing the whole parking lot, resurfacing
They
it.
said they were resurfacing it. I honestly would have put it in compliance if they'd taken a blue can of spray paint and put up the signs that are required.
Oh, it's
'cause-
something as simple as that. would
Yes,
get it.
ma'am.
Yeah.
I move that the respondent shall have until April 20th to bring the property into compliance with codes 208.2, City Code 6-1-2017, City Code 127.04, or suffer a fine of $100 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of the codes.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Matea?
Aye.
Mr. Rollinston?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mrs. Telliar?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Perfidio?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And for anybody watching that thinks that's a steep fine, you've made it very clear how easy this is to comply with this.
Simply,
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Plus, we need handicap signs.
$50 if you're parking over the
We have no affidavits of non-compliance. We'll move on to the affidavits of compliance.
All right.
Item number 6 is 21-800000141, 535 to Hibiscus.
I move to accept the affidavit of compliance and to award the city $218 for the cost incurred in prosecuting the case.
Second.
You don't have to, we can just do a,
Okay.
or do we? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Item 7, 21-800000605, 707 Drive.
I move to accept the affidavit of compliance and to award the city $192 for the cost of prosecuting this case.
You have to second.
Okay.
Do we need to second it?
Do we need a second for that?
Yes, you need a second.
Oh, it's okay, I'll
Second.
Second, okay.
second. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Item 8, 21-800000659, 644 Baynard Drive, Jared Preston Detch.
I move to accept the affidavit of compliance to award the city $167 for the cost incurred in prosecuting the case.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Minutes.
There were minutes that were submitted and corrections have been made.
Oh, I just had a question about one of the minutes, January minutes. When we made a motion, I think it's the last agenda item on Seabreeze, the way it's written here, it's to deny the petition, but I thought the motion was to accept the petition to reduce, and that two of us voted yes and everyone else voted no, so it looks to me like it's flipped. So I asked Bobby just to check it, and she's gonna get back to me on that.
And that was January 13th meeting, correct?
Excuse me?
The
please?
minutes from January 13th, correct?
Correct.
Valencia was the case, the last
Correct.
one.
Yes. I know, because I think two of us only agreed, yes, and everyone else said no, so it looks to me like it's been flipped.
So we're going to make a motion to approve the minutes, subject to possible correction in the future. Could I hear a motion, please?
Well, but the thing is, it said to deny the petition for reduction.
Right.
So it's 5-2 approved denial of the petition. So it is positive in the
It
negative.
is positive in that, because it seemed to me like the motion when we put it forward was to accept, and that people said no, but I said yes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it says
Way
here,
it's written, it's,
it says to deny it. So we voted, no, we're not going to approve
Okay.
the petition to reduce the fine stands as is.
all right.
So
Okay,
that's,
all right,
right.
I can see your point, yep.
yeah, no, I'm just saying what it says here, that's, yeah.
Great clarification.
Okay.
Now,
I,
I think we could have a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I want to make sure that we're including both January and February. Is that
February was
included in the motion, both months?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion, do I hear a second?
I seconded.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We have a spot on our agenda for public comments, and I understand that's what you wish to do. Do they need to be sworn in for that?
No, they don't need to be sworn in for public comments, but I just want to make sure that it's not for an active or ongoing case, because you should not be hearing that, or a case that a petition for reduction of fine could be currently posed. I assume that you're here for Tamillo? Are you here for the 1673 Seabreeze case? No, sir. Okay. So we just need to make sure that we don't address any issues relative to fine reductions or any open cases.
It's not a pending case, correct?
Well, there's an open permit that just has not been open since May 2020. And there's been added structures and
This is a permit that you hold or someone else holds? So you wish to...
Why don't you step up to the podium, tell us your name, tell us what your thoughts are, and then we can decide whether or not this particular board can help with that particular issue.
We're at 747 Sunset Drive. We're talking to the neighbor that's east of that address at 743 Sunset Drive.
What's the name of the person,
Of the 743 Sunset Drive.
the violator?
Violator, John Durso. John Durso, D-U-R-S-O.
Beth, is that case still open?
Yes, sir, it's an active case.
Okay, so my advice to you is, since it's an active case and Mr. Durso has not been afforded the opportunity to be here to hear this testimony, that it would not be appropriate to hear anything on an open case. There's a due process issue because he's not here.
Yeah.
And so that's my opinion, and that's my advice to you, is to not allow any comment on an open case.
And I concur with that. Do you understand what he's saying? We cannot hear your testimony without the other side being here. When the case is brought forward and both parties are here, then we can hear your testimony. I'm sorry you waited all that time.
But you can file complaints with.
With the code
that
department.
board.
Not during this meeting, but during their office hours at any time. You can call them or you can visit them in person.
I have done so many times,
Okay.
yeah. And they told me, they instructed me to come to this meeting last month. But they said they were gonna handle it, and they said, you can come next month.
I'm sure it's in process, and I can't comment on
I
how
understand,
that's
yeah.
going, but further contact with the office itself would be more appropriate.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who told you that, but we do have an open case for that fence issue.
Okay. It's just been so, the timeframe.
It does take a long time. Sometimes we try to give people as much chance as they can, and then we get to there, and it comes before us.
So how do we open up is there able to open a case in your,
I cannot
can
hear.
we open up a case? How do we? open
That should be addressed through their office.
Okay, all right.
We
don't
have an
that
open case.
as our task.
For that. That's what I'm trying to say. We have an open
Not
case.
being anything done, that's why we're here.
I would be happy to talk to you about that. You can give my office a call.
We have a hearing with Mr. Durso and talk about it in front of the board?
No, we don't let the public guide how we bring cases forward before the Code Enforcement Board. That's not how it works. So my advice to you is to talk to Ms. Hughes or her supervisor, both of them, after the meeting, and they can give you some ideas as to what they're doing that you may not be aware of, and maybe it can move the case along a little bit faster depending upon what they're doing behind the scenes that you may not be aware of.
Okay, I
Yeah.
understand, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
perfect.
Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry you had to wait.
Beth, do you have one of your business cards?
You
or
know,
any-
in my truck, I don't have it on me now.
Okay, all right. I was just going to suggest that we give that
You
to.
understand where her office is at the police department. Thank you.
In,
All right.
in fact, feel free to give our office a call and we'll schedule a meeting. Okay, for all of us.
Thank you for coming. We'll get a time for the board and staff to speak, and I wanted to thank the city commission for negotiating, and Mr. Trask also with a former case and getting that resolved. Thank you all so much for the work on that. Anybody else have a comment?
What case was that?
What case?
Am I allowed to say it was at a public meeting?
Yeah, I can tell you what it is. There were a number of cases. It was 5 cases against Mr. Charles Burrows for a number of addresses within the city, on Triplet, on Diston, on one of the other fruit streets, if I remember correctly. So there was $33,000 in fines. There was an offer in the amount of $15,000 to settle those fines. That settlement offer was accepted Tuesday night. I've already contacted Mr. Burrows' daughter, and she's in the process of, providing that payment. Just so that you also know, there are 2 other outstanding liens that were not addressed Tuesday night. One is for a property on, is it Triplet or Diston?
On Diston.
On Diston, where it's going to require a building to be completely demolished. There is a fine of about $170,000 pending on that one. That will be addressed separately. And lastly, there's a utility lien, about $17,000 that has not been paid. That will be addressed separately. And while I've got your attention, I wanted to let you know that we've been successful on, and Beth doesn't even know this because I haven't had an opportunity to talk to her about it before the meeting. We've settled another matter, the River Edge matter. This is where a mobile home was in a state of disrepair. It was eventually abated by the city demolishing the property. The city was very interested in moving forward and getting something done with that vacant lot because it's not being maintained. And I've negotiated a settlement of that case where they've actually conveyed the property to the city. and that was received a couple of hours ago in the mail, and so we're recording that deed, and that will resolve that issue. The city can take control of the property and get that one in compliance too. So there's a lot of things going behind the scenes that you may not know about, but those are two that I want to let you know, specifically the one Ms. Wade was mentioning, but she was in the audience. She heard all that on Tuesday night.
Thank you.
I'd also like to request information on the $20,000 fine that we had, and it went to city in February, I guess, the city council, and that person got a reduction in her fine after we said that she shouldn't. Is that true?
There are a number of cases that go to the commission when we get settlement offers. I don't remember specifically which one that was, but we often bring settlement offers to the city commission for consideration. Once you lose jurisdiction of the case, in other words, 30 days after the order is entered and there is no appeal, the Code Enforcement Board loses jurisdiction of the case. It is now an asset of the city. They can treat that asset like a car or a truck that they own. So if they have a $50,000 truck and they wanted to sell it for $40,000, they have the ability to do that. It's the same with code enforcement liens. If they have a code enforcement lien for $50,000 and only want to take $40,000 for it, well, then they have the legal ability to do that. And there's a lot of things that come into consideration that you may not necessarily have considered when the fine reduction request came to you. And that's because of the lack of information sometimes that people provide to you when they're asking for their fine reduction. We look at a lot of other factors when it comes to us for settlement possibilities. But yes, there are cases that came to this board. The board says, no, we're not going to reduce it. But sometimes the commission accepts less than what is actually due. And again, those are for many different reasons. Some of them are homesteaded properties where we wouldn't ordinarily be able to collect it all, even though there's a fine on it. So,
But isn't there's a documented process on how you're supposed to apply for these fine reduction requests? So, it's incumbent upon the petitioner to dot the I and cross the T.
correct. They need to provide you with all the information
Right.
they think is the most important information for you to hear, for you to make a decision. And sometimes they just send you a one-paragraph statement saying, hey, I'd like a reduction. Will you give me one? And that doesn't give you sufficient enough information because your rule requires you to find one of two things: that there is some undue hardship. In other words, they can't pay the fine because they don't have the money, and then they prove that to you, or there's something that happened that prevented them from coming into compliance timely. And the example that I often use is that they're cited for not getting a building permit for their fence that they already put up, but because the fence is in the setback, they need to go to the Board of Adjustment for a variance, and that is 45 days down the road, and it's 30 days after your compliance date. Then they would come in and ask for saying, well, I couldn't come into compliance because of the fact that the Board of Adjustment only meets once a month.
Yeah.
And it was way after the date that you set. So that's one of the two things: undue hardship or something preventing them from coming into compliance within the time prescribed. So if they don't provide you that information in their request, then
Yes.
you're going to be making your decision, and I've told you this many, many times, make your decision based solely upon what the written petition says, and you're not to take into consideration anything else. Why? Because that's what your rule says.
Right.
Okay.
But then, from my understanding, from what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm mishearing, is that you can get a second bite at the apple if the city will reach out and say, well, you really sure you meant this, or maybe you forgot to do this, or am I misinterpreting entirely? If I am, I apologize.
Yeah, the way it usually works is when someone doesn't get what they want at the Code Enforcement Board, or it sits there for a year or 2 or 5 or 10 years, I'll get a phone call, or the city will get a phone call, and they direct them all to me. Okay? And when the offers come in, when they say, look, we want to resolve this, we tell them, if you want to make a written offer of settlement, we'll review it with city staff and the city manager and determine whether or not it's something that the staff and the city attorney's office can support. If we can support it, then we bring it forward to the commission for consideration. Sometimes they don't agree with us. I have had settlement offers come to the commission for $10,000 and they agree to take $1,000. That's their prerogative. They have the ability to do that. On those cases where we don't agree or we can't support the settlement offer, we tell them one of two things. This is what we can support, and they decide whether they want to make that offer or not, or we tell them that we can't support any offer because of the fact that it's just a case that should not have happened. There are too many factors in it that complicate it, and we just don't think it's appropriate to settle the case. So I know that's a lot of information, but that's how it
Excellent. I
works.
think that's very helpful.
Okay.
Anyone else? Seeing no further business, 3:15, meeting's adjourned.